Hello and welcome to the YouTube channel for the Renaissance English History Podcast, and today a delve into the timeline of the fall of Anne Boleyn. If you're new here, a very special warm welcome to you. I'm your host, Heather Tesco. I've been podcasting on Tudor England since 2009. This channel is where I put all my episodes from various podcasts, as well as loads of extra content. It's always historical, mostly always historical, but sometimes goes outside of the Tudor sphere. So if you want more history in your YouTube feed, go ahead and hit subscribe so you never miss out on the videos that I put out. So it is that time of year again. Spring has sprung and Tudor fans start to think about what was going on in the final days of Anne Boleyn's life. Let's talk about how those 3 momentous weeks played out for Anne, for Cromwell, and for the men accused with her. Anne Boleyn was killed on May 19th. According to the imperial ambassador Chapuis, Henry ordered his chief of everything, Thomas Cromwell, to figure out a way to be rid of her on or around April 18th. So Cromwell hatched his plan and executed it, no pun intended, in just over a month. But the roots of the execution went back farther. Let's start at the beginning of the year with a quick overview and then work our way to mid-May. On January 7th, Catherine of Aragon had died. If Henry had harbored thoughts of being rid of Anne before, it would have been tricky because he likely would have been expected to go back to Catherine. Can you imagine the uproar if Henry had left Anne, coming up with some reason for why their marriage wasn't valid, and Catherine was still alive? It would have made everything that had come before look like a cute little sitcom. Without Catherine there hanging over any potential third marriage, Henry was free to get on with things. Anne likely knew this, but she had an ace up her sleeve. She was pregnant, she hoped, with the heir. If she gave birth to a healthy boy, she would be untouchable. But just a few weeks later, the wheel of fortune spun again, and everything changed. Henry had his famous jousting accident on January 24th, 1536. 5 days later, Catherine of Aragon was buried, and Anne miscarried a son that day. So much for the golden ticket. On the 10th of February, we get one of the first records of Henry showing favor to Jane Seymour. Then in March, the Act of Suppression for the lesser monasteries. This is when the supposed feud between Cromwell and Anne started, though, to be fair, the two had largely been on the same side during the entire dissolution proceedings before this. But this is supposedly when they started to have their arguments over what to do with the monasteries. On April 1st, Chapuis went to a meeting with the conservative Catholics, who were hatching a plan to replace Anne with Jane Seymour and cause a rift between Anne and Cromwell. Then came Palm Sunday and the infamous sermon by Anne's almoner, John Skipp. On April 2nd, 1536, Skipp preached a sermon from John chapter 8, verse 46 on the theme of, "Which of you can convict me of sin?" He warned against the evil counselors making scarcely veiled references to Cromwell's role as the chief enforcer. For Skipp, the Old Testament King Solomon the Wise was rich, but sensual and took too many wives and concubines to satisfy his carnal appetites. Skipp saw Solomon like Henry VIII, a towering figure in history who had risked his kingdom for a fool's gold. Cromwell, of course, took issue with this and accused Skipp of preaching seditious doctrines and slandering the King's Highness, his counselors, his lords and nobles, and his whole parliament. That same day, though, Chapuis was tricked into recognizing Anne as queen after the service, something he had been able to successfully avoid until that time. Anne must have been feeling quite confident she had just preached this outrageous sermon, and then Chapuis had to bow to her and recognize her as queen. But Cromwell went away and he spent the Easter break thinking of a plan. On April 24th, Sir Thomas Audley, who was Henry's Lord Chancellor and basically Thomas Cromwell's right-hand everything, set up 2 commissions of Oyer and Termine at Westminster. These were set up to investigate crimes committed in Middlesex and Kent, and this started to get the legal framework rolling against Anne. By April 26th, Anne knew something was up, and she asked her chaplain, Matthew Parker, to take care of Elizabeth spiritually if something ever happened to her. On April 29th, Chapuis records a meeting between Cromwell and Dr. Richard Sampson. He was an expert on canon law, so this might have been to figure out the exact terminology and rules that they could have used to annul the marriage. The next day, the King and Queen's planned visit to Calais is canceled. They had been planning on taking a trip to Calais. It would have been nice for Anne to be seen in, a foreign land as queen. Would have been good for her. Probably would have been good for them to get away and go back to the place where they supposedly consummated their relationship the first time all those years before. So this visit got called off. Anne and Henry also had an argument that day, possibly about the visit, who knows, but that's the argument that's often portrayed in movies and in the Tudors as when she held up Elizabeth to Henry, kind of chasing after Henry with Elizabeth in her arms, begging him to keep their family intact. Then Mark Smeaton was also taken to Cromwell's house that day, April 29th, to be interrogated. So a lot happened that day. He confessed to adultery with the Queen, possibly after having been racked or otherwise tortured, or at least threatened with torture. Then things got busy. May 1st brought the May Day joust. Henry left in a hurry. He went off with Sir Henry Norris, questioning Sir Henry Norris. So he leaves the joust early, takes Henry Norris, and goes off and questions him. The next day, the 2nd of May, Henry Norris is taken to the Tower of London. He joined Mark Smeaton, who was already there. Then Anne Boleyn is arrested same day and taken to the Tower, and George Boleyn, her brother, is arrested at Whitehall, also taken to the Tower. On May 3rd, Archbishop Cranmer wrote to Henry expressing his shock at finding out about Anne's arrest. The Tower is filling up quite quickly. On May 4th, we see the arrests of Francis Weston and William Brereton. Jane Boleyn, Lady Rochford, sent a message to her husband, George, that day. She was the only person to reach out to him and said she would try to plead for his life. On May 5th, Sir Thomas Wyatt and Richard Page are recorded as being imprisoned in the Tower, and Sir Francis Bryan is ordered to London for questioning. On May 6th, Anne probably wrote a letter to Henry. So there's this letter that was written that day. The authenticity of it has been debated for centuries, but it reads like Anne. I'm going to read you some of it now. It says, "You've chosen me from a low estate to be your queen and companion far beyond my desert or desire. If you then found me worthy of such honor, good your grace, let not any light fancy or bad counsel of mine enemies withdraw your princely favor from me. Neither let that stain, that unworthy stain of a disloyal heart towards your good grace, ever cast so foul a blot on your most dutiful wife and the infant princess your daughter. Try me, good king, but let me have a lawful trial, and not let my sworn enemies sit as my accusers and judges. Yes, let me receive an open trial, for my truth shall fear no open shame. Then you shall see either mine innocency cleared, your suspicion and conscience satisfied, or the ignominy and slander of the world stopped, or my guilt openly declared. So that whatsoever God or you may determine of me, your grace may be freed from an open censure, and mine offense being so lawfully proved, your grace is at liberty both before God and man, not only to execute worthy punishment on me as an unlawful wife, but to follow your affection already settled on that party for whose sake I am now as I am, whose name I could some good while since have pointed to, your grace being not ignorant of my suspicion therein." And then it goes on, and it ends with, "My last and only request shall be that myself may only bear the burden of your grace's displeasure, and that it may not touch the innocent souls of those poor gentlemen who, as I understand, are likewise in strait imprisonment for my sake. If ever I have found favor in your sight, if ever the name of Anne Boleyn hath been pleasing to your ears, then let me obtain this request, and I will so leave to trouble your grace any further, with mine earnest prayers to the Trinity to have your grace in his good keeping, and direct you in all your actions." The letter didn't move Henry, of course, but it is quite a moving letter. On May 9th, the king had meetings with noblemen and gentlemen, probably planning what was going to happen. And then the next day, the indictment for the crimes committed in Middlesex was drawn up. The Kent indictment came the next day on the 11th. Trials happened right away. Talk about the right to a speedy trial. It happened the next day. Norris, Smeaton, Weston, and Brereton had their trials on May 12th at a special commission. They were all found guilty and sentenced to death. On May 13th, Anne's household is broken up. Henry Percy, the Earl of Northumberland, with whom she supposedly had an arrangement before she married Henry, denied a pre-contract between himself and Anne. On May 14th, Sir Nicholas Carew moved Jane Seymour to Chelsea to be closer to Henry. Anne and George's trials came on May 15th. Both were found guilty and sentenced to death. On May 16th, Archbishop Cranmer visited Anne Boleyn. Anne held out hope that she would be sent to a convent in exchange for agreeing to an annulment of the marriage. On May 17th, Norris, Smeaton, Weston, Brereton, and George Boleyn were executed on Tower Hill. Archbishop Cranmer declared the marriage between Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn null and void that day. Anne's execution was meant to be May 18th, but it was postponed until the next day because there was a delay with the executioner coming from Calais. And so we see the execution of Anne on May 19th, 1536. Jane Seymour and Henry were betrothed on May 20th and married on May 30th. So all of that in just the first 5 months of the year. There we have it, the timeline of Anne's fall, starting with the death of Catherine and her miscarriage in January, going up to her very sad death on May 19th. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me grow the channel and reach more people. Plus, you'll never miss out on a video that I put out. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about Anne's trial. If you're thinking about it, I know most Tudor people are thinking about her at this time of year. Let me know what you thought about the trial, about the accusations, about Cromwell. Maybe after reading Wolf Hall, you have more of a kind of sympathetic view towards Cromwell. I would love to know. Let me know in the comments, and I will talk with you soon. Bye-bye.